Democrats may have been all smiles at the DNC, but polling shows that Kamala Harris's campaign didn't get that much of a boost from the big event. A new ABC poll found Harris to be leading Trump by just 4 points nationally. That's within the margin of error, and that's essentially unchanged from before the Democratic National Convention. And while Trump and Harris hope to make polling strides after the first presidential debate, both campaigns continue to clash about the rules. Harris is still asking for the microphones to be hot at all times, despite ABC denying that request, posting this: Donald Trump is surrendering to his advisors who won't allow him to debate with a live microphone. If his own team doesn't have confidence in him, the American people definitely can't. Wow, way to twist that. Some contortion. Don't strain your back. But the Trump campaign thinks Harris is just looking for a way out.
With regard to the debate, I think that the Harris campaign is looking for an escape hatch, is looking for a way to get out of this debate. To be clear, these are the rules that the Democrats wrote. These are the rules that we had in place for the CNN debate. Everyone had agreed to the rules, at least informally, with ABC. We have a deal with ABC. ABC has a deal. ABC is with us all the way on this. But here's what I think happened. I think the Harris folks started going into debate prep, and now they realize what they're working with. They realize that they're in real trouble with Kamala Harris.
That could be true, Emily, because she didn't do herself any favors when she was a candidate for president in 2020 and really sort of withered in the debate. So why does she want this hot microphone at all times when it worked so well in the last debate between Presidents Trump and Biden?
I don't know the answer to that. I think I do see the value in her having something that she can hang on to. And just a comment about the surge, just prior to the DNC, she came out with essentially or arguably her only policy, which was a disastrous and frightening overgeneralized economic policy that would result in total and utter ruin of the United States economy. So I think perhaps that the reality sunk in or simply didn't waft away as people were, waiting for Beyonce to perform, and she never did. On the flip side of that with the debate, I just have to say that the words from Kamala Harris are sort of laughable coming from someone that couldn't even sit down with a CNN interview without her vice president in tow. So it seems to me as a voter, I would want a candidate for commander-in-chief to say, anytime, any place, any rule, I'm ready and I will best you with the command of my experience and knowledge. And then what I want that diplomacy to be exercised is against foreign policy leaders, where they say, here are the rules of the game and I'm not budging from that. But I don't need to see it from Kamala here.
Yes. So it's interesting because there has been a little bit of a shift, even though the overall national polling numbers haven't changed at all. But men have sort of slid away from the Kamala column to President Trump's column. Why is that? You're a man, Joey.
Well, they're
presumably a voter.
They're all misogynist, and we live in a man's world, and women should be in the kitchen, and that's all the things that they want to say when they hear that. Listen, the truth is we get 60 minutes for this show, and we're going to spend 10 of them talking about whether or not Mike should be on at a debate. Not talking about the economy, the border, the wars all over the world, because if she has to talk about those things right now, with just a few weeks left till the election, she's in hot water because she has to own those things as the vice president to President Biden.
We are discussing the polls, though. I mean,
I'm not criticizing Gus. This is a topic that Americans want to hear about, but they want to hear about it because both candidates are making it an issue, more so Kamala Harris. It should not be what is capturing the headlines. If they agreed today, it will no longer be a headline, and we'll have to talk about the issues that are affecting people's lives. This plays in her favor. Whether the mic's on or off play in her favor, us talking about this plays in her favor because we're not talking about the things she's getting wrong.
But she wants these rules because she doesn't want to debate. And obviously the point of the debate
she wants
is
to make Trump
press
look like a
into
bully.
these people to tell them how they're going to make our lives better if they are pressed about the economy, inflation, and immigration, which is where President Trump happens to have an advantage, which is why some of this polling is so curious, because the three most important issues to voters, he actually has an upper hand. Why is that?
I mean, President Trump has a proven track record. We've seen what he can do. We've seen him 4 years in office, and we've seen the destruction that this current administration has caused us. And going back to the polling, I think that they talk about warm and fuzzy feelings at the convention and hope and love and warm. That doesn't pay people's bills. Americans don't care. They don't care about warm, fuzzy feelings and feeling joy. How is that going to help them? How is that going to help the inflation? How is that going to help their families stay stay safe from crime. I mean, we're looking at the border crisis, this immigration and migration, illegal migration, women getting murdered and killed. What is it going to take? Americans want to hear about policies. They're tired of this nonsense. They want to hear about policies. Who's going to make their lives better?
Yeah.
Kamala Harris needs to step it up.
Who's going to reassure them?
I think
That not every town is going to be like Aurora, Colorado.
I'm going to go with 45, possibly the next president, 47. But I think the polls reflect voters' enthusiasm when, in regards to her effectiveness and her leadership, it's lacking. And I think it's because she's faced with the challenge of difficulty distinguishing herself. A lot of people
She's still ahead nationally. I mean, she's still ahead.
Well,
by 4
not
points
with the
nationally.
economy, immigration, and the border. Trump is in the lead with double digits, according to the most recent polls. But I think it's because she has radical policies that don't resonate with Americans, with voters. I mean, just like you said, you know, her priorities are backwards. I haven't heard anyone talk about the fact that opioids are killing, thousands of people every single day. But yet, like to Joey's point, she's concerned about her microphone being on or off, and electrical, mandates and those sorts of things. Where is our priority, and who's going to be better for your family, yourself, your wallet, your future, your safety?
Well, frankly, I am, but I'm not running for president. Thank you, doctor. Speaking of a lack of joy, inflation. How much more are you paying for a Labor Day barbecue after 3 years of bang-up Bidenomics? Well, the Biden-Harris administration has a lot to answer for in terms of your juicy steak. That's next.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.